A heavy iron ring hung from Claire's septum, and as her fingers brushed against the underside of her nose, she knew it was connected to the same chain that was tethered to the wall. Claire knew not by what means, but she was a prisoner. Her breathing accelerated as her fingertips explored the ring that pierced her nose. Despite her terror, she at least wasn't in any pain. The piercing wasn't sore, and although their weight was substantial, the ring and chain weren't quite heavy enough to hurt either. Closing her eyes, Claire hooked a finger through the ring and squeamishly pulled it away from her face. Her nostrils stretched away from her upper lip, but after a few seconds, she couldn't bring herself to pull any harder. "Stop that!" came an unfamiliar voice. Claire gasped, clumsily grabbing the chain that hung from her nose. Looking up, she saw another woman sitting in a wooden chair a few feet away from the bed. Claire didn't recognize her, but black robes and a tall, pointy hat made her identity apparent. The witch folded her arms, crossed her legs, and leaned against the back of her chair. "No matter what you do, it's not coming out." Claire felt a lump in her throat. Struggling against the urge to give in and cry, she swallowed hard and let go of the chain. "But why?" she pleaded, her voice weak and hoarse. The witch's tranquil anger vanished, taking any pretense of sophistication with it. She flung herself forward in her chair, holding her hands out toward her captive. "Why? Why? Did you forget?" she spat, her voice cracking at several syllables. Claire blinked, finally getting a better look at the witch. She appeared to be in her mid-40s, but her infuriated face made her look like an angry schoolgirl. "No, Before Claire could explain herself, the witch gave her a light chop on the head with the side of her hand. She stood and waved a hand at the wall, and Claire watched in amazement as the end of the chain effortlessly removed itself from the loop and floated into the witch's hand. Without a word, the witch turned and headed for the door. Claire sat motionless on the bed, only reacting when the chain ran out of slack and sharply tugged on her nose. "Ah!" she cried, nearly falling off the side of the bed. The witch stopped, angrily stomped a foot, and then turned around. She scowled as she saw Claire tenderly holding her nose ring with her fingertips, and then she gave the chain a snap, yanking the one young woman's nose up and down. "Would you just get up? Follow me!" Feeling more timid than afraid, Claire followed the witch out of the bedroom, down a creaky staircase, and back into the storefront. She continued to gently hold her nose as she walked, relying on the intermittent tugs of the chain to know which way to go. When she finally came to a stop, Claire cautiously looked up at the witch. "This is my storeroom," said the witch, gesturing to the door behind her. "This is my storeroom after you happened to it." The witch snapped her fingers and the door swung open. Claire began to sweat nervously as she looked out over a wasteland of shattered glass, splintered wood, and piles of substances that she couldn't even begin to describe. She opened her mouth to protest, but her memories of what happened began to return. Claire simply blushed and stared down at the chain as it hung between her head and her feet. "Sorry," she whimpered, more concerned that she had destroyed her chances of becoming the witch's apprentice and less that she was a prisoner. The witch gawked. "Sorry? Sorry? Do you have any idea how expensive any of that stuff was, let alone all of it?" Claire shook her head, causing the chain to swing back and forth. The witch slapped a palm to her forehead and slowly dragged it down over her face. "Sheesh, would you stop looking so mopey all the time?" she demanded, giving Claire a start. The young woman stood up straight, forcing herself to look her captor in the eye. The witch pinched the bridge of her nose and sighed heavily. "I'm not going to kill you, or torture you, or turn you into a frog. But these are some pretty serious damages you've caused me. You don't exactly look like you come from money, but even if you did, a lot of my materials can't be bought with gold. Still, you have your arms and legs, so you're going to work for me until you've paid off your debt." Claire's face lit up. She took a step toward the witch, eagerly holding her fists in front of her chest. "Really? You mean it?" The witch stepped back, wrinkling her nose in disgust. "What exactly did you come here for in the first place again?" I want to be your apprentice. I graduated from Silverleaf University and... The witch loudly blew a raspberry, interrupting Claire's story. The young woman frowned at the disrespect for her alma mater, and before she could continue, she felt a sneeze coming on. She wasn't sure what would happen with the chain hanging from her nose, but already knew it was too late to stop. Claire held up a finger to warn the witch of what was coming, and then she doubled over with a sharp Phew! Keeping her eyes gently closed, Claire reached a hand up to her nose. To her dismay, she discovered she couldn't fit her fingers against her nostrils with her new nose ring. Claire dejectedly extended one finger, slipped it between the ring and her philtrum, and gently rubbed back and forth under her nose, causing the chain to jingle lightly. Before she could find any relief, the witch sharply pulled on the chain, yanking Claire's head downward. Ow! So that's what happened, the witch exclaimed, pointing a finger at Claire. You're not just a clumsy clod, you're a sneezer! The witch jabbed a finger into the freckled bridge of Claire's nose, causing her to recoil. The young woman took an exasperated breath and gently massaged the sides of her nose with her fingertips. Doesn't everybody sneeze? Asked Claire, sliding a finger across her nostrils once more. Not everybody blows their boogers right into my thunderdust, the witch shrieked, her flailing arms causing the chain to pull Claire's nose from side to side. Claire began to blush again, and she sheepishly pushed the tips of her index fingers together as she avoided eye contact with the witch. I can't help it. I always catch the rose fever in the spring and Ow! The witch chopped the side of her hand against Claire's forehead, silencing her. Rose fever? Rose fever? Ha! I should have known you went to Silverleaf. Grabbing the chain just below Claire's nose, the witch forcefully yanked it left and right to shake her captor's head. You don't have bloody rose fever. There's no such thing as rose fever. You have allergies. Good gracious, so-called institutions of higher learning, still telling our youth about rose fever like it's the Dark Ages. Tell me, do the professors at Silverleaf still think the moon is made of cheese? Claire simply sneezed in response. Gesundheit. Depending on what you're allergic to, I might have something for that. Thanks. The witch walked behind the counter in the middle of the shop, but she suddenly threw her hands up and screamed, Ah! What am I doing? You're not my patient, you're my servant! Get over here! Claire quickly jogged to the witch's side before she could be pulled by the nose. Now, since you destroyed my storeroom, what's your name? Claire. You, Claire, are going to work for me, Adeline Harwell, until I consider your debt paid. And no, this isn't just some trick to make you work for me forever. I'm a witch, not your evil stepmother. And you're not my apprentice, so don't even think about learning anything. Claire nodded emphatically. Once Adeline was satisfied, she began to grumble to herself as she stomped through the door behind the counter and back up the stairs. Once the witch was out of sight, Claire couldn't help but smile, at least until the chain went taut and began to pull on her nose again. And stop smiling! If you have any fun, I'll never forgive myself.